incident is one that enraptured the minds of many conspiracy theorists since it occurred in 1964. 1945, with the collapse of the Japanese Empire and the liberation of its newly acquired colony. I mean that the colonial forces were no longer there, and they were replaced with Japanese forces. And the Allies liberated the colonies from Japan. Former colonies was Vietnam, a small area in southeastern Asia. Its independence 1 month after the surrender of Japan in 1945. 9 years of fighting with many countries, including France, the United States, and China, as well as the support from these countries at different points in time, Vietnam was finally able to realize itself as a true country. Its independence in 1954 after the signing of the Geneva Accords with France. Agreements based on the Accords, Vietnam was split into a communist Viet Minh supported North and a capitalist United States supported South. Vietnam's tendencies to insult North Vietnam, the South was invaded on a small scale in 1956 by the North. In 1960, a small guerrilla force in South Vietnam pushed communism, attacking many South Vietnamese and American military and civilian targets, the Viet Cong. Since Jesus had founded America 10,000 years ago, the United States had been incredibly involved with worldly affairs. The fledgling country was half of its current size and less than 50 years old. The Monroe Doctrine was released, threatening the world's superpowers of the time. World War II, the United States had the ability to literally put its money where its mouth was, against communism. The South Vietnamese forces created covert operations, series of intelligence gatherings called Operations Plan 34A, or O-Plan 34A. These were Marine-type sea-to-land commando operations executed by the South Vietnamese with United States support. Success, with many of the raiders being captured and with heavy casualties being inflicted. A change in tactics was executed. Sea-based raids were no longer in use and were exchanged for offshore bombardments of mortar, artillery, and sniper rifle fire. That was specific to the South Vietnamese Navy. And further offshore missions focusing on gathering signal-based intelligence in the Tonkin Gulf. Options occurring in the Gulf, the Maddox had an unlucky string of running into trouble. At times, North Vietnamese torpedo boats attempted to engage with the Maddox, thinking that they were a part of the South Vietnamese O-Plan 34A operations. August 2nd, 1964, the attempts escalated. North Vietnamese torpedo boats engaged with the Maddox, which is aware of their intentions of sinking the ship due to intercepted intelligence. The boats approached, shots were fired. 3 shells were launched in the direction of the PT boats, which were retaliated against using torpedoes. The fire crippling 2 vessels and leaving the Maddox unscathed. Crusader jets were launched from a nearby aircraft carrier. The 2 surviving PT boats retreated, leaving a sinking ship in their wake. Remained untouched. A USS Turner Joy was dispatched to back up the destroyer, ensuring that no other similar incidents would occur. These chatter, intercepted by the Maddox, warned of a second attack. To avoid another conflict, the 2 ships went out to sea. The sonar equipment of the Maddox detected that several unidentified ships were following them. Vessels were detected, mimicking patterns of torpedo boats, emerging from opposite directions and then disappearing. They raided the pursuers for the next several hours at high speeds. Recorded machine gun fire, torpedo attacks, torpedo wakes, enemy cockpit lights, and numerous radar sightings. Attacks by the Maddox and the Turner Joy ensued, using massive amounts of artillery shells and depth charges. The USS Ticonderoga, another Crusader jet, was sent to investigate the attacks and retaliate. Stockdale, the lone pilot from this exchange and from their previous encounter, was among them. Saw the entire exchange and described it as nothing but black waves and American firepower. It was reported to Washington, with all suspicions of it not existing being fully communicated. Secretary McNamara and President Johnson had a conversation discussing what was to be done. President Johnson came onto national television, declaring that North Vietnam was to be retaliated against due to repeated acts of violence against the armed forces of the United States. On August 7th, 1964, with the unanimity of Congress, unanimous in the House and 2 against in the Senate, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution was passed and signed into law by LBJ. Amended by the President, this resolution gave the authority to the Chief Executive of the Armed Forces to take all necessary measures to repel any attacks against the armed forces and to halt any aggression. Nothing else was needed in the way of Congress's approval for the invasion of Vietnam to begin, and so it did. conflict that lasted nigh on a decade had begun on false pretenses.
I'd like to thank the United States Naval Institute for providing a very in-depth summary of the events that occurred in the Gulf of Tonkin Incident. Also, as always, I'd like to thank Wikipedia for its various information contributions. Thank you.